Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty good show for you here today. And we are going to talk about one of the most popular topics that we discuss on this show, and that is LeBron James. Yeah, I know. I'm the same one who keeps saying that, why does he have to get all the attention? And it's the NBA Finals. We should be talking about that. And we will. Got another episode coming up on that. But this was very interesting. I felt I needed to touch on this LeBron James story because of some interesting commentary that was made about him, as always, right? So anyway, before we get to that, you know what we got to do. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell. Please make sure that if you want the audio-only version of the podcast, you open up your audio podcast platform, do a quick search for the Format Podcast. We should come up. Give us that thumbs up or that 5-star review if you enjoy the content, and make sure you share with other people looking for a different voice from the sports media, not just kicking the same old stuff. You do all that, you know what happens. We find more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. Okay, so Gilbert Arenas, this is an interesting dude. Like, he knows the game. He was a very good player when he played. He wasn't a winner, but he was an outstanding player in terms of a skill guy. And he would really be a great fit for the modern NBA in terms of being able to isolate well and shoot the three in this this league of spread floors and shooting tons of threes and volume shooting and all that. And he would be awesome in this era. But his career, obviously, his playing career is over, but he's making his impact on the NBA in another way. He's a podcaster, he's an analyst, and he always has a lot of interesting things to say. Sometimes he sounds completely nuts. Sometimes he makes a lot of sense. This is one of those times where I vehemently disagree with him. So recently, Gilbert Arenas was on a show, and he was talking about how bad coaching is ruining a lot of NBA players. And one of the things that he touched on was, when we get into the GOAT debate, one of the things that we take for granted and don't pay attention to is coaching, right? For instance, you can look at a guy like Magic Johnson, played most of his career with Pat Riley, who is basically one of the best NBA people, not just coaches, obviously not one of the best players, but one of the best people to ever be involved in the NBA. Quick thing on Pat Riley: over 25% of all NBA finals, Pat Riley's been involved in, whether as a coach, a player, or an executive. That is crazy. Talk about an NBA lifer, right? But anyway, Magic Johnson had, I think he won 4 championships with Pat Riley, so he had an all-time great coach. Obviously, we look at Tim Duncan, won all 5 of his championships with Coach Popovich. Kobe won all 5 of his championships with Phil Jackson, and Michael Jordan won all 6 of his championships with Phil Jackson. So you look at some of the all-time best and you say, well, these guys had the benefit of outstanding coaching. If you go back further, the great Bill Russell, he won just about all of his championships with Red Auerbach, either as a coach or right there behind him as an executive, when I think he won his final championship as a player coach, that being Bill Russell. Anyway, so Gilbert Arenas had some pretty interesting commentary on that. Let's go ahead, listen to what Gilbert Arenas had to say, then we'll come back and break it down.
We're sitting here like when we're talking about legacies and we're talking about top 5s, right?
Okay.
We're talking about top 5s and we do all this back and forth. What team is this and this? And no one's factoring in coaches. The greats are being coached by greats, while their comparisons has been coached by nobodies. So the reference of information is not here, right? So if Pop is giving Wemby all of his knowledge for all these years, that's an advantage to his greatness versus everybody else who has no reference. Like LeBron's reference of basketball knowledge is him learning himself. Yeah. Not Phil Jackson. He has rookie coaches every step of the way. So what we're seeing is his greatness by himself. That has to be factored in when we argue.
Okay, so if you listen to this show, you know one of the things I'm constantly pointing out is how somehow LeBron is consistently absolved of his failures and his flameouts, and the blame always manages to go somewhere else. So this is a prime example of that. We hear Gilbert Arenas saying that LeBron never had the benefit of having the elite coaching. Now, Isaiah Thomas is another guy, the legend Isaiah Thomas is another guy who has made that kind of similar argument. Isaiah's point was, LeBron never had the benefit of having those coaches, so where did he get the knowledge from? That shows his basketball genius. Okay. I'm not even going to get into that because we know that Well, it's my firm belief that as much as Isaiah Thomas is an all-time great, he's a brilliant basketball mind. A big part for me of his lauding of LeBron is not so much LeBron's greatness, and LeBron is great and has had an all-time great career, but it's more to take shots at Michael Jordan. But that's a different story entirely. So anyway, um, when Gilbert Arenas talks about LeBron James and not having the elite coaching, right? I think that's kind of disingenuous in some ways, right? So I'm going to get into LeBron's coaching in a minute, but he talked about Phil Jackson. So this is one of the things that really drives me up the wall when people make this argument and try to put LeBron ahead of Michael Jordan. They say that, well, Michael Jordan had Phil Jackson as a coach, but what we're being disingenuous with is realistically, who was Phil Jackson before he got Michael Jordan? Phil Jackson had never even been a head coach in the NBA before. He was a rookie head coach. And if you remember in the clip, Gilbert Arenas made commentary as to LeBron having rookie head coaches at every stop, every situation, right? So anyway, Phil Jackson was a rookie head coach when he got Michael Jordan. So, wrong answer there. That's not going to make it, right? Coach Popovich, who I believe personally is actually a slightly better head coach than Phil Jackson. I don't believe that Phil Jackson is the greatest coach of all time, as ridiculous as that sounds, despite the fact that he's got, 11 championships. For me, Phil Jackson is not the greatest coach. He's the greatest manager of players, right? Which is an important part of coaching. But I don't believe he was as good at X's and O's as a Larry Brown or a Greg Popovich, maybe even a Eric Spoelstra. There's guys that you can put ahead of Phil Jackson when it comes to the X's and O's. But Phil Jackson was such an outstanding manager of egos and personalities, and that, in my estimation, is what allowed him to have the tremendous level of success that he did not playing, but coaching the type of players that he did. But anyway, so Phil Jackson, he was a rookie when he got Michael Jordan. Coach Pop, he was a rookie when he got David Robinson, and then of course Tim Duncan came along. He hadn't won anything till he got those guys, right? And then he continued winning with Tim Duncan. Pat Riley hadn't won a championship as a coach. When he became the head coach, who did he have? He had Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right? That sure helps a lot. So you look at it, and these guys that Gilbert Arenas was pointing to, these guys weren't legendary coaches when they began coaching. So the players that they had, they walked into great players. So it's disingenuous to say, well, those guys had those guys, and LeBron, he didn't have anyone. Okay, so now here's the deal, right? Gilbert Arenas says LeBron has to keep playing with rookie head coaches. So let me go ahead and name some of the coaches. Well, I'm going to name all the coaches that LeBron has had in his playing career. And let's keep in mind now, LeBron just finished his 20th season, and he's had 9 head coaches already. Now, for a guy who's supposed to be the GOAT, I don't think he's the GOAT, but a lot of people say that. For a guy who's supposed to be the GOAT, it's real interesting that he's running through head coaches like this, but we'll get back to that. So some of his head coaches, Paul Silas, who consistently got teams to the playoffs when he was head coach of the Hornets, Mike Brown, who we just saw win coach of the year, David Blatt, multiple-time coach of the year in Europe in the Israeli League, which is one of the best basketball leagues in Europe. Really good X's and O's guy. Brendan Malone, not a great head coach, so I'll give you that one. Darvin Ham, he's a rookie head coach. Ty Lue, who we've seen is a very good coach. He's been a very good assistant. Obviously, he won a championship with LeBron. Luke Walton, who, he wasn't a great head coach. He basically got his head coaching gig off of being the interim head coach of the Warriors during that 72 and 9 season back in 2016 when Steve Kerr was out for some months. So I'll give you that one. Frank Vogel, who is a very good coach, took the Indiana Pacers to the Eastern Conference Finals and ran into LeBron and the Heatles. Of course, Eric Spoelstra, 2-time champion. So it's not like LeBron has had bums for coaches. So we got to stop this. Now, here's the deal, right? When people throw this argument at me, well, LeBron hasn't had coaches. No. It's not that. LeBron is not coachable. He's not easy to be coached at all. Like, we want to push this narrative that LeBron is just this perfect dude. He's not coachable because he can't play within a system. Have we noticed that? He has to be the system. It's only now that he's getting old and he physically does not have the energy to be the entire system anymore that he's more willing to play within a system. And again, it's only because physically his body can't hold up. And that's fair enough, right? Because 20 years, all these miles, all these buckets, 2.5 years of playoff runs, right? That's like an extra 2.5 seasons on his body. So I get all that. But the point is, when we talk about the coaching, it's disingenuous, right? Now, we look at it. So LeBron is supposed to be the GOAT. We argue that he's never had coaching, but guess what? He got Mike Brown fired. He got Paul Silas fired. He got Luke Walton fired. He got Frank Vogel fired after Frank Vogel won a championship. Brendan Malone, he got him fired. David Blatt, he got fired after they went to the finals, right? He got him fired the following season. Darvin Ham, it's left to be seen what happens with him, but Darvin Ham, I think he's a tough guy and a good coach so far. He's got a good defensive mentality, but I truly believe, I don't have anything to hang this on, but I believe if he had gotten LeBron 5 years ago, he probably would have got him fired too, because the only reason that LeBron is kind of doing more of what Darvin Ham wants, or allowing Darvin Ham to coach the way he coaches, is because physically, like I said, LeBron's body can't keep up. So we know the story about LeBron going into Pat Riley's office when he was in his first year in Miami, along with D Wade and Chris Bosh, and LeBron asking Pat Riley, do you ever get the itch to coach again? And then Pat Riley having to line up the entire Heat team, not call one player out, but we know who that was, line up the entire Heat team and kind of go in on him and tell him, hey, nobody comes up to my office and tries to get me to fire a coach, So we look at this. LeBron has consistently gotten coaches fired, but of course, he's never going to get the blame for that, right? Because like I always say, who's got it better than Bron, right? He's not going to get the blame for that. So what I'm getting back around to is, we get this disingenuous notion, and this wasn't cool that Gilbert Arenas did this, but Gilbert Arenas is doing what so many in the media have done, what so many LeBron fans do, is pass the buck, right? LeBron has gotten, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's gotten 6 coaches fired and tried to get a 7th fired. Now, if you are this, some people say the second best player of all time, some people say the best player of all time, if you're all of that, right, why are you running through coaches this way? There's a thing called the common denominator. If it can't work with you and all these coaches, maybe the issue is LeBron. Now, no one is saying he's not a great player, but if he has this issue with all these different coaches, and these are guys that have been around the league, some as players and then coaches, some just as coaches, some as longtime assistants, et cetera, guys who've had success coaching overseas. Now, I get it. In the case of David Blatt, coaching in Europe is different than coaching in the NBA. But the fact is, David Blatt knows the game X's and O's wise. But what? LeBron James, he's like, yo, you don't need X's and O's. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to run this, right? And what are you going to do? Especially not with a prime LeBron. When David Blatt was his coach, LeBron was in, some of his best form. So my whole point is, Gilbert Arenas, you were super disingenuous with this. We got to stop this narrative that LeBron walks on water. He does nothing wrong. He hasn't had coaching. He hasn't had this. He hasn't had that. He's supposed to be the GOAT, but he never has enough, right? Have we noticed this? He never has enough help from teammates. He never has a good enough coach. He never has this. He never has that. He's got to make the call. When I talk to people and say, I don't like the fact that he's played GM all these years. They tell me, well, he had to do that because the GMs on his organizations, other than for the most part Miami, they were all terrible. But again, how is it keep ending up that it's always someone else's fault? This is what we got to look at. So anyway, what I want to know from you is, what do you think it is? Do you think that the issue is really that LeBron hasn't had good coaches, or is the issue that LeBron is not coachable? Leave your comments in the comment section. Can't wait to hear them. I'm going to get with you next episode, and I'm out. Peace.